of the supernatural. We're on Charter Cable, Channel 21. As always, we're glad you're here. My name is Tony Sparrow. Of course, I have host Ed and Lorraine Warren with me tonight. You know, we're going to talk about a few things. One thing we're going to talk about is their trip to Scotland. Now, Ed and Lorraine Warren like to say to me how great Scotland and England are. I like to say to them, how come you're not taking me this time? I mean, I've been there before with them, but now they're escaping for about a week or so, at the end of August, to go investigate a haunted hotel. I begged, I pleaded with Ed, with Lorraine, can I come? Can I go? I've never seen Heather on the Hill. And they just laughed and said, well, we're getting an investigation going, but you cannot come. So I don't know, maybe I'll talk him into it before the end of the month. But they'll talk about that. And they're going to talk about a famous exorcism, Annabelle Ecklin. So what we'll start out with first, if we could, Lorraine, is how did you get involved in going back to Scotland on a haunted hotel case?
Well, Tony, the case came in right after we got back from Scotland. And it came through email. And there was a couple of emails, and he went into great depth. And both these people, both the husband and the wife who owned the hotel and bought it last November, were in police work. That was their livelihood. But I guess after so many years, like yourself, you can retire. It has nothing to do with age. It has to do
As with myself, they told me to leave and never come back to the police department.
Sir.
You know how old that hotel is?
How old?
1422.
Isn't that amazing, Tom?
No, really?
Yes. It was an old courthouse. One half of it. One half of the building was an old courthouse. The other half is where people came to pay the tariff on their land, Tony.
Wow.
And executions.
And executions.
Now, this is in Scotland, right?
Yeah.
This is on the England-Scottish border, right on the border. So the man speaks with a heavy brogue, very, very heavy brogue. Now, these emails came. Finally, we made communication over the phone with him. We were trying as hard as we could to help over the phone, but it really requires an investigation in order to be able to bring an end to things of this nature.
What's happening over there?
Well, it all started, this is how he described it. They moved in there with their 2 children. There's a whole quarters on the 2nd floor that's their private quarters. His son, who is 6, his daughter, who is 9, the son is the one that seemed to be very badly affected right from the very beginning, and very frightened, and would talk about these figures that were in his room. He called them very big, big people, and he could see their head, and he said he could see their shoulders, but he couldn't see other parts of them. Now, one night he woke up, and he was hysterical, crying. The father didn't know whether the child was having nightmares or what. So he went in, he sat on the bed. He wasn't reading to the child, he was soothing the child. He put his hand on the boy's face. The room was illuminated. He looked, and as he looked at his son that night, that's when the realization that something was there came to him. There was a black, opaque form that took the form of like an opaque big shadow of a person that he could see between his son and himself. It blotted out completely his son, who he was sitting right next to on the bed. That's where it all began.
Now, you consider these people to be very credible because they were police officers? Is that what they were? Police officers?
Yeah, well, it's not just, yes, they were police officers. It's not just that they were police, Tony. It's the fact that when they bought this place, there is one employee, one staff member who had been there 30-some years, another one that had been there 18 years, and they told them in a lighthearted way that the building was haunted. But they didn't know if they believed things like that. Now it has reached the point where they all see these dark shadows. They're losing a great deal of business. Things move all over the bar, in the lounge.
Doors, slam them.
Doors going down to what he calls the beer cellar, where the beer they must keep the beer where it's cold. and that door came and hit him very hard in the face, almost enough, he said, to break his nose. I can't, one time, him and his wife, this is about 10 days or so ago, his wife had gone up to bed. He was downstairs. He was working at the bar with the bartender. There was a lot of people in. He decided to go up to check on his wife, who wasn't feeling that well. He sat on the couch next to her. He will tell you how many minutes he sat there. And he said, "Can you feel that behind us?" And she didn't. So all of a sudden, there was a tremendous bolt, like more than one person kicked the back of the couch real hard. So they both felt that. And she told him that she felt it too. I mean, it was obvious. Then the couch, which he describes as an antique couch that's very, very heavy, moved right towards the television set with the two of them on it. The doors open and close by themselves. What happens with the knobs, they keep turning by themselves.
It's almost like The Haunting, that movie,
It's
The Haunting.
almost like The Haunting.
Well, they do hear voices too. They hear mumbling, which we call magic whispering.
Without going in the house, of course, you didn't, or the hotel, you didn't go in yet.
No.
But what's your gut feeling, Ed? What is it?
Oh, very bad. I've talked with the man, and I can tell that he's genuinely frightened. Now, the guy was a police officer. I don't think he frightens too easily. And from the things that he told me, you know, after 10 minutes, I can tell whether or not a case is genuine. We wouldn't be traveling 3,000 miles away if we didn't think there was something in that
So you
hotel
think
that we
it's
could
legit?
help them with.
You definitely
yeah.
think
And
it's legit.
we are meeting with an exorcist there, and a very influential member of the Edinburgh Parapsychological
University of Edinburgh. This man is affiliated with the University of Edinburgh and is also
I was hoping this time you can bring me a souvenir back. Can you bring me like a coaster or something?
Promise.
Anything.
Promise.
A coaster,
Promise, Tom.
maybe a matchbook from a pub.
I'm bringing back some heather. How's that?
You bring back some Heather too.
I know.
You know, what's her last name? but
But Tony, you've been there, and Judy has been there, and we know how much you love it, Tony.
I love it.
But this is going to be
Don't bring me back any scotch.
No?
Okay? I don't want any scotch in like a quart bottle
Okay, Tony.
with a brown label that says
You want it in a barrel.
Glenmorangie. I don't want that.
You don't want that, okay?
I don't want a special bottle of scotch that's gift wrapped. Okay? I don't want that. But go ahead.
You want it in a barrel, right?
Yeah.
So anyway,
The scotch there, ladies and gentlemen, is probably the best in the world.
it is.
I know because I tasted most of it. The single malt scotch is probably the best
best.
scotch in the world,
Oh yeah.
bar none.
And anybody that's
you'll love
that's
it.
listening.
Get some single malt scotch, you'll love it.
Yes, it is.
If you
It's
drink.
very
If you don't
good.
drink, you'll still love it.
But we're going to, Tony, we normally do not do this. This is one exception to a rule. We are going to stay in the hotel. We're
Are
going
you
to
guys taking
stay.
any pictures or anything? Or what do you
Oh yeah. Oh well, Fox
Oh, yeah.
Television.
Fox is the one that is bringing us there.
Fox Television is bringing you there.
Yes.
They're going to
Fox-
film?
They're
Yes.
yes.
Taped film, whatever?
They're
We'll let you
funding
know,
us.
ladies and gentlemen, when it's going to be shown, probably in October.
Well, the best thing, Tony, is that people could check our website. Then they know when things like this are going to air, because we usually post it.
Well, MTV wants us again to go into
Fairfield Hills.
And they want to film these 6 kids by themselves this time. Going in
Ladies
one
and
at a
gentlemen,
time.
for those who don't know, Ed and Lorraine Warren went into Fairfield Hills with a group of young adults on a show called Road Rules for MTV, and it played like 87 times on MTV. And we'd go to lectures and college lectures or wherever we went, and they'd all go up to Ed and Lorraine and say, "We saw you on Road Rules." But anyway, they're going to do that again. When is that going to be?
Well, we're going to be filming when we come back, Tony.
Ed, I'd like to segue, if I could, for a moment. And I'd like to talk, if I could, a little bit about Anna Ecklin and that exorcism you told me about.
Yes, this was probably one of the best documented cases by the Catholic Church in all of its history. Anna Ecklin was a woman 54 years old who had been brought down from Wisconsin by Father Theophilus Ressinger, very famous exorcist
Right.
and a monk in the Catholic Church. to have an exorcism on her performed at St. Joseph's Church in Earling, Iowa. Father Steiger was a pastor, and he had a community of nuns living there also who had taught at the school and worked around the church. And Father Ressinger felt that the nuns could help in the exorcism of Anna Ecklin. Now, this woman was under possession by her own father and devils from the age of 14. The father had raped her on numerous occasions, and she would not go along with these ancestral ideas of his, and he hated her. He hated her so much that when he died, he actually possessed her with these devils, molested her, and this poor woman was tormented right up to the age of 54 when Father Ressinger went to help her. Now, she had 30 exorcisms performed, which all failed. Now Father Ressinger is going to bring her to Earling to his good friend's church, Father Steiger, in the hopes that he can be successful. Well, they warned the crew on the train about what could happen, and things did happen on the train. Outward manifestations, movement of objects, sounds, very frightening things from the woman. Finally, they arrived in Earling. The church is only probably 3 blocks away from the railroad station. It's still a very small place. They brought the woman to the convent, and the nuns were all stationed around this woman on a cot. Mm-hmm. Suddenly, a loud, bellowing, hoarse voice came out of the woman. Terrible obscenities, filthy obscenities came from the woman's mouth, and she rose into the air and went up to the ceiling and clung to the ceiling by her hands and feet. Father Ressinger came in, and he pulled the woman down, and they tied her to the cot then. And the nuns constantly were throwing holy water at her. This woman, outpours of what looked like spaghetti and human hair came out of her mouth. Barrels of it. I'm talking barrels. I'm not talking a plate full of something. Barrels of it covered the room. The stench was so bad that the nuns who were in that room in the convent had to relieve each other every 15 minutes. Now, in the end, the devil did almost kill Father Steiger, Frank Steiger. He had laughed and mimicked the priest, finally threatening and saying that he was on a call at that point in a farm area going to the sick, but he would be killed. His car went off a bridge and he was almost killed, except that God is more powerful than any devil. Well, he finally came back to the church and the exorcisms were continued. Anna Ecklin was freed through those exorcisms, but there's a booklet that the Catholic Church puts out, and it's called Begone Satan. And this has all the facts in there about that exorcism, much more famous, much more terrifying even than The Exorcist, what the movie was made out of. Now, Lorraine and I have seen exorcisms. We've seen what can happen to people. We can see the physical changes. It's horrifying to experience. Imagine these nuns with this woman, Anna Ecklin, in that convent. The farmers that were working around the fields said that they thought they were killing pigs because of the howls and squeals and animal-like sounds.
Oh boy.
And everybody would stop work and just look over towards the church. At that point, Father Steiger wanted to remove Anna Ecklin. But Father Ressinger claimed that since they had gone this far, that they should continue it. And they did, thank God. Because eventually she was freed by these devils and her father. Now people think, how could a father possess his own daughter? Look at the evil that we have in the world today. Young boys killing their families, girls, torture, killings, murders, young children in kindergarten being shot to death by a madman. This is nothing. Where the devil is involved, anything can happen. And the worst thing is that the public, if it's a skeptical public, is the best protection that devils have.
You think the devil has more of a presence nowadays than it did,
Positively.
say, 50 years ago?
Oh, yes.
Positively.
Oh,
and
yes.
it's said that the devil would show himself at the end of the millennium, or the beginning of the millennium. And he certainly is showing himself. Look at the horrible things that are happening. Children, they are children, 12 and 13, taking rifles, killing numerous people, mass murders. It's horrible what's going on today. The kids today, I feel sorry for them. I wouldn't want to be a kid today. Being brought up the way they are with these drugs, the way of life that they have to lead.
Lackadaisical attitude by the parents.
Yes, very lackadaisical
You know,
attitude.
lackadaisical, when I say that is like a kid will come home from school, and the teachers can't even they can't even discipline him if the kid can swear. Like when I was in school, if a teacher called my house and said I did something wrong, my father hit me.
Sure.
Or he'd have me in the room for all summer.
You can't do that anymore.
Today they say, well, my son it's freedom of speech. He can say what he wants.
Yeah, that's only because the law says you cannot touch that child. But there's disciplinary ways of taking care of kids that you don't have to beat them or hit them or any other thing. You know, you take what little pleasures they have. Maybe they like to watch a certain TV show. You don't let them watch it. You know, you ground them for a week. And this is the way I think that kids should be disciplined, you know.
So do you think the exorcism of Anna Ecklin was worse than the real exorcist case?
Yes.
Oh, I think in a lot of ways it was.
Yes, it was.
And I want to say that
because it went on for so long, too.
A lot of people don't realize that the movie The Exorcist was based
on a true
case history in 1939. A young boy by the name of Douglas Dean, that's what they call him, 14 years old. He lived in Georgetown, and this is where the priest actually performed a lot of the exorcisms, Mount Rainier. But Lorraine and I, that was 1946. We had heard about it, the papers were full of it, and I wasn't really into this that much at that time, but of course I had great interest in it. And eventually, a few years later, I was able to get the secret files of The Exorcist. And where you see the girl's head turning, it was a boy, not a girl. They put the girl in there, and you see the slash marks on her face when she was hit with the holy water. This actually does happen. Remember in the Maurice Thuriel case, the farmer, that we have the film of, his head splitting open, right, on video. Blood coming down the eyes, out of his mouth. Boil-like eruptions coming out of the skin. The skin looks like it was burnt with a blowtorch. Snake-like eyes. We have that on film. These things happen. There's no two ways about it. And if the public could see this just once, they'd be very cautious about believing the skeptics and the atheists.
I got a question for you, though. Should people out there be afraid of being possessed?
Only if they cross that thin margin that we call the natural to the preternatural. For instance, don't use Ouija boards. Don't hold seances. Don't go into cemeteries like Lorraine and I do and our investigators unless you are prepared to be an investigator and to take your chances. There are many protective ways that you can go in there. And remember, we don't go into these places out of kicks. We go there to help people, to get the evidence to prove that evil exists. That's why we do this.
So just a normal person, an everyday person who goes to work and comes home and might be religious, goes to church, doesn't do anything wrong, doesn't dabble in things like the Ouija board.
Their chances are almost nil.
Should they worry about it?
If they become
soul victim. Now, the Smurl family.
What's a soul victim?
People that.
What is a soul victim?
People that like the Smurl family, who had such horrible things happen, who were so religious, who were so community-minded, who were such good parents, plus they were so good to their family in general, the older members
of. Maybe don't know who the Smurls were.
The Smurl family was the case that Ed and I were involved in West Pittston, Pennsylvania, that became the book, The Haunted.
And the movie of the week.
And the movie of the week, The Haunted. Now, why would something so horrible, Tony, happen to a family like the Smurls? Because look at the people that were informed about that. Look at the people that were educated
They
regarding.
are the chosen ones.
That was the sole reason for why they were credible, Tony. When they told the story, people knew who the Smurls were, what they stood for.
So would they be soul victims, though, Ed? Is that what you call
a soul victim? Is somebody who intercedes
for somebody else.
For like the Smurl family. trying to help the Smurl family.
And then they
we
get
could
attacked.
wind up as sole victims. For instance, you know a person that's being haunted. You come to the Warrens. You say, I'd like you to help my friends. We help them.
Yeah.
Devils aren't too happy about that.
No, you're
They'll
putting
start
yourself in.
after that person who brought us into the case. They become a sole victim.
So you're putting yourself in jeopardy because you're posing a threat to something that might be in this given situation.
Can a person who is skeptical or does not believe in God be haunted, be possessed or haunted?
Yes, yes,
Be
they
possessed.
can.
Can-
And you know what we find?
There are no skeptics or atheists in truly haunted houses.
We've never met a true skeptic. We may go in and meet atheists. We
You won't
have.
come out an atheist.
They won't. But I wanted to make another point, Tony, and that's how.
Go ahead,
and
make
I-
your point. I got another question for Ed.
Okay. We went to Erling, Iowa in 1980 during the period of time that we were involved in the possession of David Glatzel in Brookfield, right here. We went
That was the
there.
Devil in Connecticut case.
That was the Devil in Connecticut case. We went there to pray by the grave of Father Ressinger or Father Steiger. And we went there and asked for their help, their guidance. I will never forget that, Tony. Here is this magnificent building that looks like a cathedral in the middle of a cornfield out there. And as you leave the town, you go up a small grade, and there's a massive big bulletin board to the Blue Army, which is an order regarding devotion to the Blessed Mother of God. At that point, the sky turned this incredible shade of blue. It wasn't here, it wasn't here, it wasn't behind us, it was only ahead of us. And as Ed and I drove, we weren't talking, and we were watching and witnessing a sunset, Tony, that was really miraculous. It was so incredibly beautiful. And I think the guidance that we got, maybe the intercession from that priest, is what really helped Ed and I, where the Glatzel family were concerned.
Ed, what are the manifestations or what are the signs and symptoms of somebody who's possessed and needs exorcism?
All right, there's what we call perfect possession, which is hard to tell if the person is possessed. But we look for outward manifestations such as a table levitating in front of the person, that person talking in languages they've never learned, the physical characteristics of that person changing, the person sitting in a chair and levitating right across the room, strange things coming from that they never knew about, any type of education. Suddenly they could be spouting things that they never knew anything about, such as music, literature. Person could be a hillbilly. All of a sudden they're talking like some kind of president of a university. We look for unusual outward manifestations. Now, if we're in a house and all of a sudden, Tony, you levitate with that chair, we know that you're not mentally ill. We know that this is paranormal or supernatural or preternatural phenomena occurring before our very eyes.
How about somebody who gets really strong, something like that?
Oh,
Extreme
superhuman strength.
Yes, superhuman strength, where some guy 5'7", like Bill Ramsey, weighing about 150 pounds, takes 6 or 7 huge police officers weighing 250 pounds each and over 6 foot and throwing them around like matchsticks. This is the type of thing we look for. Also, physical characteristics changing.
I take it you've been on various exorcisms, and have you seen this kind of?
Positively.
Have you ever seen anybody levitate?
Yes.
That's in the...
Not only have we seen it, Tony, remember I was picked up and thrown right across the room. Lorraine was thrown 25 feet right through the air. That's levitation. There's nothing else. But we've seen people. I've seen David Glatzel. As I walked into his room one morning when an exorcism was supposed to take place, a huge priest was standing right alongside of his bed. And this boy had a bad habit of just swinging out and hitting you in places you don't want to be hit. So I told him, Father, you better back up. And as I said that, this boy was in a fetal position, rose into the air, flew over the two of us, and landed on his feet and ran into the hallway and locked himself in the bathroom. This boy levitated right through the air.
That was like in a movie. Part of that was in a movie, right?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I remember we
yes,
went to
it
that
was
restaurant. And I met Carl and what's the wife?
Judy.
And Judy Glotzel.
Yes.
And Debbie Glotzel. They're
Yes.
very, very nice people.
Yes, they
Extremely
are. They are
beautiful
nice
people.
They are.
I forget the name of the restaurant, but it was around here.
Yeah, it was in
And
Stratford.
Don't mention it.
Down in
It's
Lordship.
too commercial too.
Yeah.
No, I think it's out of business now, but
It is out
it
of
was a
business.
very nice evening with
yes.
them.
Yeah,
That
our
was back in,
seafood
what,
night.
1980?
1980, Tony, during the period of time we were involved
So
with it.
David Glotzel was what? Possessed?
Yeah, he was
Yes.
11 years old. He was possessed. It was Father Dennis that brought us in from St. Joseph's Church in Brookfield there. And Father Dennis was very frightened himself because he had a sickly mother in Ireland. And so another priest took over as pastor at St. Joseph's for him, and he helped us. And that man was sick from the day he helped us till today.
That case, Tony, where the Glotzel boy was concerned, there were 6 Roman Catholic priests involved, and 4 of them, I think, if I'm not mistaken,
From the Vatican.
were ordained and schooled in Rome.
Really?
Yes, they were
What year
brilliant,
was this
brilliant
case?
men.
1981?
It was 1980 into 1981, and why we were involved in that is when the case in Lee, Massachusetts. Now,
Yeah, I remember.
I want to tell you, the Lee, Massachusetts, the Glotzel case, the case in West Hartford, all of these cases,
All around the same time.
and
Amityville.
Maurice, all of them, Tony, the exorcisms were performed on May 2nd. We had nothing to do with choosing that. And Padre Pio, this year, a man who physically fought the devil and is up for beatification of canonization, was beatified on May 2nd
That's
by the Holy
unbelievable.
Father. That's not a coincidence.
All right, so in the whole scheme of things, we're going to wrap this up. The whole scheme of things, what's the worst exorcism that there ever was, in your opinion?
In my opinion?
Ooh, Maurice?
I
Was
would
it
say-
Anna Ecklin or was it Maurice or was
No,
it?
I would say Anna Ecklin. Anna
think
Ecklin,
so?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Anna Ecklin had a lot more phenomena occur to him for a lot many
more
more
years.
years than poor
Maurice.
Maurice had. But Maurice's case turned out in tragedy, as you know. He again became possessed after 8 years, killed himself, almost killed his wife. So that's a very bad case. And Maurice was a wonderful man. He had a great sense of humor. Everybody loved him. They used to call him Frenchie. But again, it was his father and devils that possessed Maurice Theriault.
Any last words for the audience as far as how they should
Yes.
guard
Yes.
themselves or just be careful?
I'll say one thing. Never open doors to that world. And never, ever get involved in the work that Ed and I do without tremendous amount of faith, because that is the only protection that we have. Our knowledge is helpful, but it's only faith that protects you. I
That's
don't
good
know what you want to
advice.
say.
Oh, and always remember to stay behind your wife.
Yes.
So if anything does
Absolutely.
happen, you'll be all right. They'll take the wife.
Thanks, honey.
Absolutely. That's good advice. And on that note, not stand by your man, stand behind your wife. On that note, I'd like to say goodnight to the audience. I'd like to say goodnight to Ed and Lorraine. We'll see you after you come back from Scotland. Don't forget the bottle of scotch. And for Ed Warren, for Lorraine Warren, for Charter Cable, I'm Tony Sparrow. Good night.
Good night.